Welcome again to our second session, Introduction to Cloud Technologies, powered by none other than AWS. We are incredibly excited to have you all back with us and especially thrilled to introduce today's focus, a deep dive into Amazon Web Services, the backbone of today's digital infrastructure. Whether it's strong computing power, scalability, or global connectivity, AWS plays a pivotal role in modern technology, from startups to enterprise level systems. This session is all about hands-on learning, whether you are complete beginner or already experimenting with cloud tools. Today's session will offer you exposure how do AWS works and how it powers the platforms we use every day. To guide us through today's journey, we are honored to welcome a very special guest, someone who truly understands the cloud from the inside out. Please join me in giving the warm welcome to Mr. Chamir Dulangar, AWS Community Builder, a passionate cloud advocate and hands-on expert who's helped hundreds explore the AWS ecosystem. Here we share it, not just technical knowledge, however, practical tips, real-world applications, and valuable insights into the AWS purviews that lead the industry in cloud services. So without further ado, let's jump in get our cloud journey to the next level. Mr. Tamir Dulanga, the floor is yours.
Good morning. So before getting to the session, I think better give a bit of background on who are we and who I am. And so I think a couple of months ago, Aaron came to one of our AWS meetups and he said that he's from IEEE from the University of Jaipur and they are planning to do some sort of hackathon and if we can help you guys in organizing this hackathon regarding the cloud technologies. So it was new team for us as well. So AWS user group is like a volunteering organization that is in Sri Lanka. So AWS has this concept of user group. So if we take a country like India, there is a user group for every main city, Mumbai, Calcutta, likewise. But in Sri Lanka, there is only one user group. So this user group concept is purely sponsored by AWS. So we have this Asia Pacific manager, Sapras, who is also from Sri Lanka. So he's managing this AWS user group. So volunteers who are passionate about AWS get together and we organize meetups, community days, things like that. So this is our meetup page. So if you go to this our LinkedIn page, you will be able to see we have organized several meetups, AWS community days, things like that. So we have huge community who is waiting for a meetup to happen. But last couple of months we haven't done a meetup, so we will be planning to do one in May. So the organizers in this group are mainly our AWS community builders. So any idea who is AWS community builder? This year there were some new AWS community builders in Sri Lanka, and 3 or 4 of them were from University of Colorado and second year and third year undergraduates. So to be a AWS community builder, what you have to do is contribute to the community. So you can write articles, you can do sessions like this, and AWS opens a submission every year on January, and then you have to say them what you have done and apply. So if you have done enough, they will give you this title AWS Community Builder, which is valid for 1 year. So within that year, you will get free exam vouchers. So you can do AWS certifications for free, and you will get some flags. You will get some AWS credit to test your applications or review applications. So there are a lot of programs that AWS supports university students as well as individuals. So that's a little bit about AWS community group. And in Sri Lanka, there is a community hero as well. So there is only one community hero, Manoj Panendu. He's the one who's leading this AWS community group and most of the AWS related work in field. Right. So this won't be like a session of where I speak for the most of the time. So I need to discuss with you guys to understand what you guys know. So let's make a little bit conversational. So otherwise it will be a boring and tell for you guys. So I don't think that most of you guys are familiar with AWS, but that's okay. So the plan is today to give you at least a single idea why you should have your application in the cloud, not in the AWS. Right? Yeah. So before getting into the session, I will. Uh, so I'm Shamir, and currently I work as a technical lead in a company called Emlia. So in that company, we are like mainly based on cloud. We using like cloud first approach. So we are building several applications that is connected to AI agents, web browsers, LLMs, things like that. So I was a graduate in University of Porto IT faculty. So I graduated in 2021, and then I joined 99X in that year, same year. So I worked 99 at 99X for 4 years, and in this year, February, I resigned from 99X and joined MDL. So because the passionate was there for me to work with cloud, so that was the main reason. And also I am a AWS certified solutions architect and 4 times community builder. And I like to do some sessions like this and write technical articles. So it's like something of hobby of myself. So yeah, so that's about myself. So now let's get into today's session. So in the hosting an application locally, what do you do usually? So there is some commands to run an application. It will be up in your local machine, right? You are using localhost, and the application will run in your machine. The backend will run in your machine, and the database is locally using like MySQL or something. It will run in your machine. But what if someone else needs to access your application? If the application is running on your local machine, and assume that your friend needs to access your machine, what you should do? I need answers. Right? If you guys are not giving answers, I don't need them to be right. You can give your own answers. Also, I don't know it. 100% I don't know anything. Right? So I also can give wrong answers. So don't be afraid of giving answers. So මගේ ලැප් එකේම තියෙනවා නම් මම රන් කරපු ඇප් එකක්. මගේ යාළුවෙක්ට ඕන නම් ඒ ඇප්ලිකේෂන් එක ඇක්සස් කරන්න මොකද්ද කරන්න ඕනේ? එයාට පුළුවන් ද එයාගේ ලැප් එකෙන් ඇක්සස් කරන්න? Can they access from their laptop? No, right? So what should I do? I need to give my laptop to him, right? So what if I'm building an application that need to be accessed by your entire batch? Batch එකම access කරන්න පුළුවන් app එකක් හදනවා නම් what should I do? Should I run it locally? No. So I should host it somewhere, right? So that's where these cloud services comes in. So there is AWS, Azure, GCP, those are the 3 most dominant ones. Out of them, Azure and the AWS are the most used in Sri Lankan industry. So they provide these services where you can host your application in the cloud. Right? There are compute services, there are storage services, database services, messaging, notification, like there are like more than 300, 400 services you can use for different reasons. So if you are building a cloud application, you should know at least like, all right, if I need to host my application, there is a service like this. If I need a database, there are several options like this. I need to pick one of them. So the purpose of today's session is like to give a basic idea of what are the services you need to run a basic application. And in our next session, we will are planning to do a like hands-on work experience of building a serverless application. So today I will be making this base for next session, right? When it comes to cloud, we usually tend to know that all these things are provided by cloud. So it's right to some extent, right? So when it comes to AWS, we are saying that those are managed services. So managed services in the sense what mean is, as developers, we do not need to manage those servers, security of the servers, availability of the servers, and the reliability, things like that. We do not need to think about that. But when it comes to security, there is something called shared security model. So we also responsible and the AWS also responsible. But other they take care of everything. They take care of scaling up the services, scaling down, and they ensure that if something happens, the data is always available. So we will not lose our data. There are options. So sometimes we can enable and sometimes we can disable those options, but they provide and we just have to take when you create this resource, right? So to ensure these things, there is like a global infrastructure of AWS. So AWS basically has several regions across the world. So if we go there, so this is the regions in AWS. So if we take North America, there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 9 regions there. So these regions are like located based on the usage of AWS services. So as you can see, there are like several regions in North American region. So this is Oregon, North Carolina, Canada, West, like that. And if we go to Asia Pacific, you can see like that. There is a one in Mumbai and Hyderabad. It's only 2022, this is 2016, and we have one in Malaysia, Singapore, and I think one's coming up on Taiwan and Sudo. Usage of AWS is going up in India as well, so they are creating these regions. So when we create the AWS resource, let's take like an EC2 instance, we have to select a region. So out of this available region, we have to decide, right, what is the region I'm hosting this service, right? So when deciding the region, we need to think about where is our audience is. So if we are building an application for a Europe or America, we should select a region of America or Europe, which is closer to our user base. So it will improve the speed, performance of application when users are accessing our resource, right? So there are some other resources that are global level as well. So those are global. AWS makes sure that it is available on all regions, right? And if we select a one region, let's say like this Mumbai, it has 3 availability zones, right? So what is an availability zone? Say this is the Mumbai region. So in Mumbai region, there are 3 availability zones. So when we create a resource in a region, AWS makes sure that so there are options for some services. We have to select that multi availability for deployment, but some services AWS itself makes sure that is at least hosted in 2 of these availability zones. So let's assume that I'm creating an RDS database, relational database. So in relational database, there is option to enable multi-tenancy deployment. Have independent internet connectivity, independent security, and they are connected with each other using fiber connection. So this infrastructure is AWS create this infrastructure. So if we get a region in AWS, so let's take Mumbai as example. So there are 2 to 6 availability zones in each region. So if the demand is high, there can be 6 regions. If the demand is low, there can be 2 regions. So generally, there are only 3 regions. So if we take a service like RDS and enable multi-agent deployment, AWS will create database copies in all these 3 regions. Not regions, sorry, availability zones. Right? So these availability zones, each one has independent connectivity, security, and fault tolerance, things like that. And they are connected to a fiber connection. So why there is AWS maintaining 3 places our data center? There are data centers in availability zone. So why they are maintaining 3 data centers? What's the use of that? So when I say availability zone, it's like a very close place. Right? So region is like there can be a region called Colombo, not Colombo, like let's say Sri Lanka is a region, right? So those three availability zones can be one in Colombo, one in Kandy, and one in Goal. So physically they are separated in three different places. If something happened like a natural disaster or network connection failure, it will be isolated to this one single availability zone most of the time. So if earthquake or something happened in Kandy, the Kandy data availability zone and their data centers can be down for due to natural disasters, right? So that's beyond our control. But since AWS has two availability zones with Colombo and Goal, they quickly connect the application into these resources in these two availability zones and deliver our application. So even a natural disaster happens, we do not need to think about the availability and the reliability of our application. Right? Even the entire region is down, there are options like backup mechanisms where we can quickly replicate our whole infrastructure in another region. So that's the beauty of cloud actually. So it takes a lot of work of developers' time. So if the industry is going trends like now, the developer is like a UI engineer, tester, DevOps, all the things like developers have to do all the things, right? So the market for like QA, the reality, the QA, DevOps engineering is going down. I don't say there are no jobs, but only the very talented people will get those opportunities because there are services like this that mix up the world and we can easily do these things. So I will say one another thing like last few days I tested this out with some new application. Have you guys started using Cursor AI? So now like you can draw the UI you need even in a pen in a paper and upload it to Cursor. It will generate the UI with all your templates and styling, mobile responsiveness, things like that. So actually now there is no need of like UI engineer right now. So the developers can do it. If I do it by manually, it will take like 1 week to do so, a complex UI. But now it generates in 5 minutes if you do the correct one. So that's the trend of industry and teaching the cloud, it will remove most of the work as the developers and it will take uh, responsibility of managing these services like this. So I talked about regions and there are available within the region. And all these edge locations, regional caches are like they are extending the services even further. So if there are like high demanding, there is an availability zone in Colombo, and there is high demand in the region like Portuguese, they are bringing a small set of resources to Colombo and they are creating a data center there. So users can access those resources even faster. IP locations and regional edge caches are things like that. And these wavelength zones are for 5G connections and local zones are for like specific companies that are reliable on AWS, but they need to maintain their infrastructure on premises. So AWS provide a concept called local zones for themselves and outposts are also similar to like that. So there are a lot of services and infrastructure wise AWS are handling to make their service available globally and also make our service highly available and reliable. That's why we are saying the cloud service easy to use. So that's about availability. So I covered most of these things. So when it comes to availability zone, when it comes to a region, it has a name. US East, it's North Virginia, but it also has a code. When we are writing and selecting regions within our code base, we are using this code name. US East 1, US West 1, EU Central 1, that's Frankfurt. So within that region, the availability zones are named as A, B, C, D, E, F. So we do not know which data center is pointed as A. So AWS manage itself, it do not disclose it to us, but if there are 6 availability zones, it will be named as USB 1A, 1B, something like that. Right? Right. So any questions out of these things? තේරුම් නැත්නම් අහන්න රීජන් එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා කමෙන්ට් එකේ තේරුම් නැත්නම් ආවෝ අහන්න. නිකුත්ම තේරුම් නැද්ද නැත්නම්? So if you have question, hands up, I will come to closer and you can ask it. Okay, right. Any questions, right? The last time, no? Okay. Yeah. So with all these infrastructure, they are using them to host these services, right? So when it comes to services, I think the computing services are the most important thing for you guys to know. Like when you are hosting an application or something, you need to use the, you know, so one of you guys said you use Nginx, right? So the whole thing. Heroku, heard of Heroku, Vercel, things like that. So they are also providing these computing services to users, right? So in AWS, there are like 6 computing services, EC2, Lambda, Fargate, Lightsail, ECR, EKS, things like that. But out of these, EC2 and Lambda are the two most used services when it comes to software development. Right? So today I will talk a bit about EC2 and Lambda. Right? So does anyone know what is an EC2, what is an Lambda? Right. So when you are buying a computer, what are the things you are looking in a computer? Computer එක ගණිත මොනවද බලන්නේ? Memory, processor, RAM, OS, things like that you consider, right? So EC2 instance is also a computer, right? So you use your computer to play games, host applications, run applications, things like that, right? EC2 instance is a virtual computer. When you're like creating an EC2 instance, you have to select something called Amazon Machine Image. So it's the OS. You can select a Linux, Windows, Mac OS. So there are Ubuntu. There are 4 options. You can select one of them. And then you can select the memory. 4 GB, 8 GB, 16 GB, 32 GB. There are like a lot of options. And processor and RAM. Likewise, there are hundreds of options and combinations. So you can select all these things and create a machine. And you will get virtual access to those machines. So you can SSH or if you get Windows, I think there is Windows pattern. I don't remember the exact name. So if you are using Ubuntu or Mac, you can SSH log into system. And then you can do whatever you do in your computer using those instructions, right? But based on the configuration you select. So when you also go to a shop and buy a machine, the low spec machines are cheaper, high spec machines are much expensive, right? It's also similar when it comes to EC2 instances. If you are selecting an high memory, high performance lab instance, it will cost you more. If you are selecting a small like T2 micro one, it will cost you very little, right? So basically, this is a virtual machine where you can host and run your application. But when you run an application in here, you can export it out of anywhere. So you can like create an endpoint or something, and you can export it to anywhere in the world. In your local machine, you can only export it to your local machine, right? Both slides, right? So when it comes to instance type, there are like 5 main instance types. So general purpose, compute optimized, memory optimized, storage, and accelerated computing. But as web developers, we are mostly using this general purpose application to host our application. It is more than enough. These services are like for high performance computing, batch processing, image processing, things like that. Like if you are doing your research on something related to that, you might be going with one of these 4 options. But when it comes to web development, the most using general purpose one. And if you are using the free tier, so AWS is 1 year of free tier. When you create an account, you have this P2 micro instance free. This is like the most smallest one, but it is more than enough to run your university project. So you can run your applications 1 year for free. Right. Now, when I was asking some questions from you guys about AWS, IaaS cloud use case, why everything in clouds, we got some answers that they have on-demand pricing and it's cheaper, things like that, right? So this pay as you go model is the one of the most prominent pricing models when it comes to cloud, right? So you only have to pay for what you use, right? When it comes to EC2 instances, there are 6 pricing models you can choose it, right? This on-demand pricing It's the most straightforward one. When you create a service, we start your EC2 instance, and let's say you are using it for 2 days and you are closing, right? You will have to pay for those 2 days. So let's assume that you are paying $1 per day, and for 2 days you have to pay $2, right? Then it also has this option for reserved instances. These instances are 75% cheaper than on demand. So if you pay $1 on demand per day, for this one you will have to pay 0.25, right? It at about an hour. But you have to purchase it for 1 or 3 years. You have to decide like, okay, I will be using this instance for 1 year, then I can go with reserved instance. This is much cheaper. And there are also saving plans, dedicated cost, dedicated instances of things like that. So I'm going to use saving plans, but on demand, reserve, and dedicated cost and dedicated instances. So those two are like gives you access to manage the entire server that is EC2 instance is on, of the where this EC2 instance is located. So if we create an on-demand instance, it will create in any data server in the region you select. Region එක කොයි හරි AWS එක EC2 instance එක හදලා දෙනවා. That's right. But there are some regulations like GDPR, NIS2, ISO අහලා තියෙනවනේ. ISO අහලා තියෙනවනේ, right? So there are like data regulations in countries like Europe that they cannot share their data outside Europe. Europe especially for third world countries like Sri Lanka, they cannot share data. So in those cases, they can select the region, and also if they are going with this dedicated custom, dedicated instance, they can select what is the data server. So AWS server allows customization up to that level. So if we need to make sure my data is on this server, we can purchase the entire server using dedicated cost and dedicated instance option, right? And the most cheapest EC2 instance type is spot instance, right? So it's like up to 90%. Like අරක ඩොලර් එකයි නම් මේක ඩොලර් 7යි වගේ ලාභයක් තියෙනවා spot instance. Then some of you might ask, why don't we go with spot instance only? I have this spot instance use කරන්නේ නැත්te ඒක ලාභයි. Right? There is always a trade-off. So AWS use these spot instances out of available free EC2 capacity. So if we take a region, there are like they have like allocated amount of EC2 resources and memory allocation to that region. The always this full capacity might not be in use, right? There is a free capacity. So this free capacity they give to other users in a very low discounted price. So if we are going with spot instances, we have to define like, right, I will be paying $0.5 for my instance per day. And AWS maintains a fluctuating price for spot instances. So if the price is below what we are defining, then price we can use our instance. But when the demand goes high, the spot price will increase. And when it crosses with our threshold, like if we go beyond 0.5, we will lose our instance. AWS shut down in our instance within like 2 minutes. So our services will be interrupted. That's why we cannot use spot instances only for any service, right? So we can combine spot instances, on-demand instances, and use it. Like to optimize cost, there are options. Like rather than using 3 on-demand instances, we can use 1 on-demand and 2 spot instances, which will be much cheaper. So there are options like that we can use the customer, right? And then another thing is someone said that AWS is highly scalable, right? So scalable means no matter the number of requests we send, AWS handling, right? So A-level result බලුවනේ හැමෝම කොච්චර ලේසි වුණාද result බලාගන්න දාට log වෙන්න පුළුවන් දාසාවගේ website එකට. බෑනේ. ඇයි බැරි? scale වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන්නේ. ගොඩාක් users ලා log වෙනවා. ඒ system එක servers හදලා නැහැ. එච්චර load එකක් handle කරන්නේ. ඇයි එහෙම හදන්නේ නැත්තේ යාලා? කියන්නේ ලොකු server එකක් අරගෙන හදන්න පුළුවන් නේ. ඔයාලා කියනනේ මේක log වෙන්න බෑ. ඇයි හදන්නේ නැත්තේ එහෙම? result එන දවසට විතරයි ඉතල load එකක් එන්නේ. අනිත් දවසට කවුරුත් ඔකට log වෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ. මේ අපරාධය එච්චර කාලෙකට ගෙවන්නේ. Right? If they are using AWS, they have a solution for that. So the Lambda is the most easiest one to scale up and down, but EC2 also, we can scale these services based on the demand, right? So there is a option called auto scaling group, so we can identify that's technical part. But when it comes to scaling, they have EC2 instance support manual, dynamic, predictive, and scheduling. Right. So let's assume that I'm creating one EC2 instance, right? So now only like let's say it's the T2 micro one and 5 users are accessing this EC2 instance, the application in this EC2 instance. How many application are posted? Users will take access to the application is working fine. So now all of a sudden I'm like, let's assume there's an e-commerce application, I'm giving an offer on Black Friday or something, right? Now the user count increases to 500. Will my small EC2 instance be able to handle this 500 load at once? No, right? So if some users will not logged in, there can be issues like that. So since I am giving the offer, I can manually scale my EC2 instance, logging into the system and creating several EC2 instances. So I can manually create it. And you can load balancer and redirect my request, right? That's a manual way of doing it. But what if the load increases without my knowledge? I don't know that there can be a surge of users. It can automatically increase the number of users to some reasons. I don't know that. So I should be able to handle that as well, right? So there's another option called dynamic scaling. So in dynamic scaling, if we take like an EC2 instance, we can set like CloudWatch alarm. So this another part, just remember that there are some sort of alarms that we can see. So if we are setting an alarm at 80% of CPU usage, so we are saying that if the usage of this EC2 instance is 80%, create another server, right? So if the usage is 80%, it will create another server and it will lower the usage of both these servers, right? And if we, so likewise, then it will like, let's assume that we will add create 4 instances. And if the usage of EC2 instance is less than 20%, we can say to shut down another EC2 instance. So if the usage goes beyond 20%, it will shut down, will start to shut down instance by instance, right? So likewise, there are options to dynamically do that. And also there is a predictive way of machine learning one. And there are scope. So mostly we are using dynamic scaling and income to the right? Right. So next one will be Lambda function. So this is the like most popular service when it comes to AWS. Right? AWS kirana AWS Lambda tekkunama AWS Lambda. Oka ahala diyena AWS කියන නම කියද්දිම ඕනෙක් වෙන්නේ. So Lambda is also a small computer like EC2. But when we create an EC2 instance, it will run until we shut down it, right? අපි start කළා අපි shut down කරනවාම run වෙනවා. But Lambda function, when we send a request, it will be automatically up, process our request, and if we are not sending several requests for some amount of time, it will automatically shut down. So what is the main benefit you see there? මොකද්ද main benefit එක Lambda එකේ? Time එකට විතරයි lose වෙන්නේ. So if we are using it for a small amount of time, cost will be lower, right? So that's the main advantage when it comes to Lambda. And it is automatically scalable. So in EC2, I said that we have to do it manually and set policies, predictive things like that. But if you are using the Lambda function, if you are getting 100,000 of requests, it will automatically scale up. And then when the request goes down, it will automatically scale down. It handles scalability, right? So it will only run for a small amount of time. The cost is lower and it is highly scalable. Then why don't we use Lambda for everything? And why do there is option called EC2 and other options? The Lambda කියන තරමට හොඳයි නම් ඇයි EC2 කියලා එකක් තියෙන්නේ? Yes, so in the chat there is also answer called cold start. So we said flexibility. When we are creating an EC2 instance, we can select the OS we need, processor, things like that. But when Lambda, we don't have that flexibility. And there is an answer called cold starts. So what is a cold start? So when we are not sending any request to a Lambda function, it's shut down, right? So it's not working. We are not getting close. When we send an initial request, it will take some time for Lambda function to spin up. පොඩි වෙලාවක් ගන්න function එක up වෙන්න. So for initial request, there will be a delay. So normal web application, it's totally fine. But it when it comes to like things like life critical systems or security mechanisms, aviation systems, those delays can impact, right? So there are ways to remove that delay, but work around. So, and most importantly, the maximum duration of a Lambda function execution is 15 minutes. එක request එකක් උපරිම process කරන්න පුළුවන් Lambda එකකට විනාඩි 15ක් විතර. So normal API request, web request, that's fine. Like if you are doing a model training or something like that, which can take hours, Lambda function is not an option. Image processing, batch processing, it take more than 15 minutes. Lambda function might not be an option. We have to go with EC2. Right? Yeah, so the cost pricing model is like this. So for 1 million request, you have to pay like $0.3. So that's why I say that the cost will not be a problem when it comes to overall cost. So these are things I discussed. So Lambda, why we should use Lambda, when we should use Lambda. So it's highly scalable, so efficient, low overhead, and it's event driven. So we can trigger a Lambda function based on an event like uploading an image, an event like that. If we upload an image to S3 bucket, we can automatically trigger a Lambda function to generate a thumbnail for that one. So things like that. And why we should use EC2 long running application. Since Lambda is only runnable in 15 minutes, for long running ones, we have to use EC2. And customizability to that one. And resource limits, instant time, things like that. And stateful application. So EC2 has in memory. For EC2 instances, we can plug like it has a local cache, and we can plug EBS, elastic block storage, and elastic file system for EC2 to keep that data and create snapshots. So those two are like main computing services that are trying to go. Any questions from audience of that? Right, so then I will like quickly go to its already 10. Quickly go through these some of these services. Anyone heard of this S3? So when you are creating an application, where do you like store images, PDF, video files? ඒ වගේ දේවල් තිබ්බොත් කොහෙද සාමාන්‍යයෙන් host කරන්නේ? host කරන්නේ නෙවෙයි, ඒවා upload කරන්නේ කොහටද? Database එකක් හදලා දානවා images වගේ එකක්. You usually need that. But it's not like cost efficient in terms of performance. We can kind of store like large hash it and store in the database, right? So Amazon's simple storage service S3. This is the object store, not the database. Object store. We can install images, audio files, video files, PDF install to this, and it will keep it forever, right? So when it comes to S3, AWS ensures that it's 99.911 durability. So you will never lose a file when you upload it to S3. So they ensure that. And it's 99.99 available. When you need to access it, it will be available, right? So this is like the most reliable service you can get when it comes to storing objects, right? There are versioning options, so you can, if your object uploading multiple files, it will version it. You can do anything you need as object store. And also you can use it for web hosting. Like if you have a front-end application, a small one, you can build it, upload it to S3 bucket, and it will give you an URL where you can access the application. It's static web hosting. And security, so security at rest, security at transit, AWS handling. and storage classes. So there are like 7 storage classes in AWS S3. Standard intermediary, standard infrequent access, monitoring infrequent access, and glazing. Right? So most of our web development tasks, standard storage is more than enough. So it's highly available, highly usable, and it is good for applications that frequently access S3. So අපි application වල profile picture වගේම දානවා නම් හැමතිස්සෙම access කරන login ඒවට S3 එක හොඳයි. But cost එක වැඩිම storage bucket එකත් S3. S3 is standard. It's the most costly AWS storage. When I say costly, it's not a huge cost, but compared to others, costly. Right? Others, we have intelligent query, standard infrequent access, one zone infrequent access. So when we go to this side, the cost will reduce and the access pattern will be a bit different, right? So this is good for frequent, this is frequent and infrequent, and these are good for infrequent access. So අපි මේ වගේ infrequent access තියෙන එකක් use කරලා හැමතිස්සෙම access කරන්න කියන cost එක වැඩි වෙනවා. Then let's say like we are logging, we are keeping log files or something like that. So let's take the university, they are like keeping your research file. Let's assume that your submissions and things, they are keeping a record of it until you complete your degree, right? So once you submit it, they will mark it and they will not access it, right? දවස ගන්න access කරලා බලන්නේ නැහැ, මාස ගන්න බලන්නේ නැහැ, මොකක් හරි ඕනුත් නේ ඕන වෙන්නේ. So that they can use simply standard infrequent access or something. And intelligent query. So in intelligent query, the bucket itself maintains a life cycle policy. So when you upload that one, it will be like on top of the bucket. So it will be ready to access. Not a virtual bucket, I'm just saying as an example, right? Bucket take you bucket yaganna or level access karanna puluwan. So if you are not accessing it like for a month or so, it will move it down or further bit down and create new files on top. And if you are not accessing it for like 3 months or so, it will move it down to down of the bucket. So since you haven't accessed it. But if you access that file, it will again move on top of that bucket. So intelligently it manages the life cycle of the object. And these two are mostly designed for infrequent access. So I can't exactly remember the numbers. I can't exactly remember what is like exact durations of them. And you can see that availability, right? This is 99.99 here. 99, this one is 99.5. Why is that? This one is one zone. So previously I said that there are 3 or 2 availability zones, right? So all these buckets are in multiple availability zones, but this one zone, in fact, infrequent access one is only offered in a single availability zone. So if we can like afford the data link to be lost, we can go with that option and it will be much cheaper. And these are like ratio options. So if we are archiving the data for 1, 2, 3 years, we can go with these 2 options. So we cannot immediately access a file in this later storage. So provide with the owner access කරන්න බෑ සමහර ලාවට 48 hours යන්න පුළුවන් 5 hours යන්න පුළුවන් ඒ වගේ තියෙනවා මේ වගේ file එකක් access කරගන්න ඕනේ. But they are much cheaper. So good for like compliance, archive data, ලොකු data archive කරලා තියාගන්න හොඳ options තමයි laser storage එක. Right? So I sort of like giving you an understanding because we are running out of time. So EBS and EFS are also 2 storage options similar to S3, but they can be directly attached to EC2 instances. So EC2 instance can have directly attached to EBS and EFS. And EBS instance can be only attached to one EC2 instances at a time. එකපාරකට එක EC2 instance එකකට විතරයි. ඒකෙන් unblock කරලා තව එකකට පුළුවන්. But EFS it can be attached to multiple EC2 instances. So I will not go into details of these. So I don't think like for your hackathon and all of this you will need these things, but we definitely need this thing. And now database. So what are the databases you guys are using? SQL, MongoDB, things like that, right? Relational and unrelated. So AWS also have multiple options when it comes to relational and unrelated. They are supporting RDS, MariaDB, SQL, Oracle. So there are relation options. So RDS is like an RDS relational database system is popular with the relational one. So it provides you multi-agent deployment, which I mentioned earlier, and it allows you to create replicas, automated backups, and so when it comes to each replicas, right. So let's take an RDS database. Right? We have this one instance on our database, and we are using it for both read, both write, and read access, right? So when there is high number of write and read request, what will happen? The database will throttle, right? The performance will decrease when it's large number of users trying to access it, right? To avoid that one, RDS support something called build replica. So the main database instance will be used for writing, right? When we add new record, will be update record, it will be first updated in this one. And when we need to access the data, users now will access data from these replicas of this main database instance. So it will reduce the load on the main database instance. And it will synchronously update these replicas based on our write request, not immediately, asynchronously. Right? This is another like feature of RDS that allows you to reduce the load on main database instance, and like you are having large number of read requests. If it is a reporting database or something, you are accepting data from everyone. So this is a good architecture for database type instance like that. DynamoDB. So this is the main NoSQL database service provided by AWS. So if you need to go with NoSQL non-relational one with AWS, DynamoDB is the go-to one. So similar to RDS, it's highly available. So it supports something called global table. So if you are enabling the table global, it will be available on all regions. And you can have DIMA recovery options and on-demand backup. So there is something called point-in-time recovery. It means that if you enable this, you will be able to revert to your database up to any point in last 35 days. And whether you have created the backup manually or not, you can access it for last 35 days up to any point. And the on-demand backup is the backup you are creating manually. So if you enable point-in-time recovery, you can recover database regardless of you have created on-demand backup or not. And this has like a millisecond of latency. Millisecond gana yani record that access කරගන්න only large number of record access කරන්න පුළුවන් DynamoDB එක. It's really fast, highly available. When you create a DynamoDB table, it will make so in normal SQL you have primary key and secondary key, right? In DynamoDB there is something called partition key and sort key. So when you create a table, this ID will be like by default the partition key. So you can easily match a record using ID. You can give that, okay, give me the record that is matching with ID 1, 2, 3. So it will give the record. And that's query option. And also you have option to scan all the records and then filter with the ID. So since the primary partition is ID, you don't have to do that. But now assume that you have to search a user by an email. So unlike in SQL, we cannot use that now ID equals user email. We cannot write that because email is not a partition key. We cannot directly map. So for that, we will have to scan all the records and filter it maybe in our backend code or front-end code based on the email. But it is highly inefficient because there can be like hundreds of records here. So we have to read all the requests. It will take time and it will cost you, right? To avoid that, DynamoDB provides two options called global secondary indexes and local secondary indexes. So using global secondary indexes, you can define this email as also a primary key. So what will happen is you will only see this table, but DynamoDB creates a copy of this table. Name, ID, sorry, email, name ID. So it will have a new table like this. So now this is the primary key. Now you can also put it like this. Here, magic. So these are global tables. So there you can create up to 5 global tables for a DynamoDB normal table. So this is a way that DynamoDB supports you to quickly access your data with most efficiently. Follow some tutorials regarding this, like there are local secondary indexes, global secondary indexes. So if you are using DynamoDB table, you should have a good understanding of how this works. Otherwise, it will cost you a lot. Yeah. So those two are the final two services I will discuss, and then I will hand over to you guys. So I have like one scenario and this planned out. So I think you guys have faced situations where you need to send emails when your applications like sign up emails, sign in emails, password, right? So in AWS, there is a service called simple notification service. It allows you to send notifications to multiple services or multiple targets at once. So you can send WhatsApp messages, Slack messages, emails, SMS with one link using this AWS send, right? So multiple messaging, suppose multiple messaging protocols, emails, you can connect Lambda functions, things like that, and this span out pattern, which means from one request, you can send it to multiple places. That's the span out pattern, and it will give you messages for itself. So this is the module notification system is if you need. So there is also a dedicated email system called SES. So this is SNS. And the last one is SQS, a queue, right? So there can be situations where like right. So there can be a Lambda function that process an image, right? And afterward, we will store it in S3, right? So Lambda is highly scalable. You know, right? But S3 is not that scalable. So we don't have one bucket. So now assume that Lambda is scaling up to 1000 Lambdas, and at the same time, the S3 are getting those 1000 requests. So there are some limitations in S3, and you will lose some of these images, right? What you can do in such situations? So you can create a queue from SQS and redirect those image requests to queue. So then it will queue those requests and give to S3 one by one. And there is a concept called dead data queue. So if one request fails, you can put that in dead data queue and you can review it later. So you can easily handle this type of sequences and there are errors and see what are the errors, what are requests that have failed using SQS. So like use couple. So if you are not using a queue, your Lambda function and S3 are directly coupled. Your request is going from directly from Lambda to S3. But if using a queue, you can decouple it. So now the Lambda and S3 are not connected. Lambda and queue is connected. Queue and S3 bucket is connected. Right? So there is nothing retention, regular queue, incident timeout, things like that. So those are settings mainly. Just get the idea and just get the idea. So how the service works basically. That's it. Yeah. So any questions? So I think that will be it. So I didn't go into details about EBS and ESS. So if you have any questions related to that, you can ask from me. And anything related to these points that I have discussed so far. මොනවා හරි ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා අහන්න අපි next එකට යන්න කලින්. Right, so if you guys don't have a question, I have a question for you guys. So it's a very small scenario. So usually I have three scenarios, but I decided to only discuss one here. So you have been hired as a cloud architect for Flipkart, a startup launching a small e-commerce platform, right? Customers can browse products and add them to carts, and admins upload and manage product images. Orders and user accounts are stored in a database. The admin starts small because it expects a traffic spikes during promotions. And the development team is clean and want to move fast with low maintenance overhead. So they basically need to build this application quickly and start it with. But they expect that there can be spikes in the usage, right? And they need to upload images and basically that for the database. So what I need from you guys is to design a small solution of yourself. So you can like two rows can get together and come up with the answer for this solution. So we are using this service for this one. This is the reason I'm using that. So when it comes to a hackathon or something like that, you will just come up with this scenario, right? Then you need to have decide what is the AWS service I'm going to use there. Why it is used. So when it comes to evaluation, you will be question like, why did you use it? What is the cost of it? It is highly available. It is durable. So you will be questioned on things like that. So decide. So you have to decide on compute solution, database, and a storage solution. And tell me why did you choose with that? So I will give like 5 to 10 minutes to you guys discuss and come up with the solution. So there is no one defined right answer for this solution, right? Based on the experience, based on the knowledge you have, you can come up with a solution. But afterwards, you can find it, right? So for their scenario, we combine EC2 and Lambda. So I suggested that we go with Lambda. Because if we are going with EC2 and Lambda both, we have like deploy code to both places, right? We have EC2. And when we come to Lambda functions, we have like several frameworks we can use. Like Amplify, serverless framework, full means. So there are infrastructure as frameworks. So you do not have to log into AWS console, create an Lambda function and write code there. So as you normally work in an OJS or Spring Boot application, you can create a template using this framework and write Lambda function code in separate files, and just one command, it will create all the functions and you can deploy it. So, but when it comes to like, now you assume that you are going with Lambda. And all of a sudden there is coming a requirement that we need to process videos or something, right? Since the Lambda cannot handle it, you guys can create an EC2 instance dedicated for image and video processing. And when a request comes, you can direct that request using the Lambda function itself to that EC2 instance and get the response. So EC2 will handle it asynchronously. So there are solutions like that for you. And we have also for the image uploading part, I discussed earlier when it comes to SQS, right? If there is a huge load of images coming up or something like that, you can use SQS to decouple the application to avoid the request being lost. And if you need to send promotion emails, promotion SMSs, things like that, you can use SMS, right? So for the problem you need, there is a solution you can use, and they are very easy to use, right? Yeah, so that's the small scenario. So any questions or any suggestions that you need to discuss regarding this, so anything like මෙහෙම කරන්න පුළුවන්ද මෙහෙම කරොත් හරිද ඒ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා අහන්න අපි ඩිස්කස් කරමු. That will be it for today. So you guys have, and thank you for listening. So we have more than 1.5 hours. So I'll be here for like 15 minutes. So if you have any questions related to this, so industry, you can ask only. So, and if you have any questions, you can reach me out through LinkedIn. Coming to the learn is the LinkedIn and information. So drop me a message if you have any questions. Thank you.